I don't have to. Okay. All right. The other thing is too, with this size group, we can really be open with the discussion. And so let's, we've prepared a bunch of things and we'll talk about that, but we'd rather just talk about what's going to be useful for you with this content. So let us know what really is of most interest to you with regards to this particular topic of people or productivity. Okay. And then, while I'm going to speak for Josh. While you're talking, um, I think it's okay to interrupt him, maybe use the raise your hand thing, or, stop and maybe do a chat if you have a question, because we have a lot of different subjects to cover and you'll forget the questions. So go ahead and unmute, keep yourself unmuted and ask questions. I'm sure, Josh, you're okay with somebody interrupting if they have a
Sure.
question, right? Okay.
Yep.
Great. Okay. Go ahead, Josh. Why don't you introduce yourself and we'll get started.
Okay. My name is Josh Chernin. First of all, thank you, Ken, for inviting me. My background is manufacturing management and leadership. I've run a bunch of different manufacturing companies in the United States, and I also spent 5 years in Germany, where I built a plant and then ran that plant for 5 years. That was in the aerospace industry as a tier one supplier to Airbus. I also do a little bit of angel investing and angel advising and nonprofit work and some of this and some of that. But for the last 8 years, I've been consulting to small and medium-sized manufacturers, meaning up to a couple hundred million or so. I put together a firm called Business Improvement Group. I have two partners. We have several associates, but the partners always do the work and are on site. And all of us are of a certain age, so we have a certain experience. And we don't sit in conference rooms writing reports. We get out onto the plant floor and talk with people and look at what's going on and make recommendations. Sometimes the hardest part is figuring out what is going wrong and what is the root cause. And the fixes are simpler. But we've done everything from literally designing production lines to installing ERP systems and everything in between. Every company is different, and we've been doing this now for 8 years, and it's going well. So that's a brief introduction.
Okay.
I won't belabor this slide. The economic outlook being very uncertain for a whole variety of reasons. There's not a lot that any of us, at least individually, can do about it. But what we can do is control our own performance and our own resiliency of our own companies. That much is within our control. Next slide, Ken. One thing in particular that actually led to this presentation is the issue of hiring. Hiring is really difficult, especially for manufacturing companies. And it's always sort of mystified me why manufacturing companies are so quick to cover up problems by hiring people rather than fixing the problems and improving productivity and limiting the need to hire in the first place. There's just a surprising number of companies that don't think that way. But for what it's worth, manufacturing is among the most difficult places to hire, partly because a lot of kids don't want to work with their hands, although that emphasis is beginning to change, finally. But even with that, kids find technical careers in the trades generally to be more attractive than careers in manufacturing, unless they're engineers. But the trades, the training is much better. The pay is generally much better. There are defined career paths, and you can own your own business. after a while. And manufacturing generally does a pretty bad job of all of those things. We're going to be talking about some of them in a little while. But anyway, that means that manufacturing is sort of last in line along with, Walmart and McDonald's for hiring people, especially on the floor. It's different with engineers, and there are many more engineers in manufacturing now than there used to be. But to hire the people who actually do the work is very, very tough. All right, next slide. So what I'm going to be talking about are sort of the primary routes to improving productivity, and this is not an exhaustive list, and it's not meant to be choose one or the other. It's really all. But they involve people, systems, project management, supply chain management, Lean and Six Sigma, and continuous improvement. I see a hand up, David.
I thought I was hoping that was a thumbs up.
Oh,
I agree. This is all, not one. This is in parallel.
yes, it is in parallel. And you asked a question prior to the webinar being started about AI, so I will mention what the roles of AI are from time to time. All right, next slide. So people. And what I don't mean by people is firing them. What I mean is this. I'm going to go to a philosophy that I've developed over the years. When you ask people what the assets of a corporation are, generally they'll say things like the factory, the equipment, the tooling, the inventory, cash, and so on and so forth, all of which is true. But if you lay that out on a spectrum from limited to unlimited, I put them all in the middle. And I assume that they're going to take care of themselves. And generally they do. But there are two things at the far ends of the spectrum that I pay a lot of attention to. On the limited end is time. You're very limited with time. Everyone gets 24 hours a day, and that's it. So in the context of a company, what that means is you don't want people wasting time. And I was always very jealous of my people's time and making sure that it was well spent. So for example, if I saw people manually transferring information from one place to another, I'd call a timeout, call the IT people and say, make these things talk to each other, because I don't want people spending their time like that. That's not a good use of their brain. At the other end of the spectrum, the unlimited, is people. Their energy, their ideas, their creativity is literally unlimited. You can have as much as you want for free if you encourage it and if you develop an environment which allows that to flourish. So what does that mean? First of all, if you're having problem with retention, if your turnover is high, at least find out why people are leaving. And don't accept more money as the answer, because that is never the answer. Usually, the answer is one of two things if you dig down. One is they don't like their boss for whatever reason. That is the number one reason why people leave. And the second reason, and this is especially true of the good people, is that they don't understand their career path. People who are good, who are ambitious, who don't know how to grow within the corporation are going to leave to some place that shows them a clear path. The money is secondary. Lots of times people will leave for a job that pays more, but that's not the reason they left in the first place. So understand at least why people are leaving. There are some really good hiring practices that I can share with you if we have time that make it much easier to weed out the people who you want from the people you don't. Recognition is really important, and it does not have to involve monetary compensation. In fact, I think that messes things up. But there's all kinds of other ways of recognizing people that don't involve money. Making sure they have the tools to do what they need. And that goes back to my earlier example. If they're having to manually transfer information, or if they can't find the information they need, that's not a people problem. That's a systems problem. And it makes it a people problem. And it prevents people from spending their time the way they want to. Clear career paths, or at least the options. And that follows along with understanding what it takes. It's one thing to map out a path. It's another thing to say, this is what it's going to take to follow that path. You have to have both. And education. More and more people value education, whether it's conducted inside the company or as part of a tuition reimbursement plan or something like that. So if you want to exploit the resource, the asset that you have that's most unlimited, start right here. David, I see a hand up.
Onboarding.
Yeah.
Barry, I can't, the picture's too small. Are you grinning, Ken?
No, I agree totally. Onboarding. I'm with you, man. Go ahead. Ask the
So,
question.
Boy, where to start? So terminology is a big deal because my working career is basically back office and administrivia in financial services. Liberty Mutual, Fidelity, New York Bank, et cetera, et cetera. And the jargon is oppressive. And I'm in the context of the narrowness of undergraduates who don't really know, they're so busy being students, they don't have time to see what's ahead of them. But language, how to bring someone on board and engage them in the now unfamiliar terminology. They've been force fed. They're just like geese however you force feed geese in academia, financial jargon, et cetera, et cetera. But now they're out in a business that's got a whole different set of language. So that's another one of my windmills.
Yeah, and I agree. And actually, I just had a conversation with a client about this yesterday because their onboarding process consists of filling out a few forms and then throwing people out on the floor to figure it out. And
Yeah,
that's not the way to do it.
Right. And I'm trying to figure out how to engage it with gaming, with crossword puzzles, with flashcards. But anyway.
Well, one thing I always suggest is to invest a few days in exposing them to the entire corporation, because too often people get assigned to a machine and that's where they live and that's their world and that's all they know. And they don't understand even the rest of the manufacturing process, much less the importance of systems like inventory systems, or what the finance people do, or what the customer service people do. They live in a tiny world, and then you ask them to think larger and bring you ideas, and they're completely out of context, and you wonder why.
Yeah, I think, that's a really good suggestion, Josh. And, so it sounds to me like, and I don't know the details, David, but shadowing you or other people in your business will help them to learn the jargon or the idiosyncrasies of the business and terms. A combination of that and reading, obviously, studying, learning, whatever materials you have, they've got to do the knowledge accumulation part, the homework part. They should be willing to do that on their own time and then shadow you. And the more they can get their hands dirty, the more they'll learn, for sure.
I'm in a break. This session here is a break the last 2.5 days have been MIT's Chief Data Officer Information Quality. And what you're talking about here, Josh, I mean, you could drop right in one of those to just, alter your terminology. Don't say manufacturing. Actually, but no,
Yeah.
Worthington
Yeah.
Steel was the last speaker.
Yeah.
It's the size of the firm or what they do is irrelevant. And I'll let you know, you guys are talking to me because I did learn something about Y2K. I own the URL Retirement Brain Drain.
Yeah. I don't want to get too much into this topic, but I think, this slide really what speaks to me is the tool part. Okay. And then especially in my world, there's some, and we were talking earlier about AI before Kelly joined, and this is where there's been some dramatic improvements in my end, so that automating the communication, automating the client, the opportunity pathway that prospects and customers go through, and the responsiveness of customer service, and even outreach, and in particular putting together a good quality list of prospective customers and their contact information. It's almost instantaneous now. All of these things basically automating the whole sales process, the behind the scenes, the information is what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the process for people to buy. That's where you still need the salespeople to be the prospector, to be the qualifier, to be conducting the sales meeting. But everything else that's administrative, that typically, even with tools, even though they have a CRM, even though they may have a good quality list, even though they have they could even have a auto dialer, still salespeople spend 25% of their time with administrative stuff that it can be significantly reduced with AI. It's pretty amazing some of the stuff that they're coming out with that can be really help them with their time.
And you're using LinkedIn, is that right?
Well, I use LinkedIn, but I use an automated service to really find people and to message them and connect with them. For example, I use an automated system for that. I use CRM and marketing automation tools to automate the response depending on where they are, how they respond to things, and then I use a list database service. So let's say take LinkedIn for example. I have a tool that is integrated to my CRM. So if there's somebody that becomes a lead for me, okay, I can go to their LinkedIn profile. I can click on Surf is the one I use, and I say add to CRM. It puts it automatically, all the information right into my CRM as a contact, and then it searches 12 different databases and serves up their cell phone number in a matter of seconds.
Yeah, so I'm transitioning. Well, but anyway, okay. You
So
said
that's
Surf, S-U-R-F?
Yeah, Surf, S-U-R-F-E. Yeah. But that I
Let's
just
go,
use that. Huh?
Let's go to the next slide.
Yeah.
Yep,
Oh, wait,
yep.
sorry. Yeah.
Yep, sorry.
Go ahead.
Here we go. Systems. In my experience, the single most common cause of lousy productivity is lousy systems. And you can look at that in several different ways. One thing I encourage people to do is to do a survey within their company of what I call rogue systems. These are tools that people have designed for themselves. They're often in Excel to help them do their job. But what it really is an admission that the system is not serving their needs and that they have to design their own tools to do their own job. And what happens over time is a proliferation of these rogue systems that are independent of each other. They don't talk to each other. They aren't connected to the ERP system. They've got tons of good data in them, but no one can access it. And it's a symptom of a lousy overall ERP system. Look for manual transfers, clunky processes. Now, the interesting thing about improving productivity in the office as opposed to the plant is that it's much harder to do because it's hidden. Out in the plant, if you see something that looks screwy, it's not hard to find. You can see it, you can touch it, it's tangible. With office processes, even simple ones like paying a receivable, paying a payable, if it's a stupid process, no one's going to know about it unless they dig into it because it's all hidden. It's hidden in the system, it's hidden behind someone's computer screen. And unless you start asking the question and deliberately looking at the process, you'll never know. You'll just see these people, they're working hard, they're doing the best they can, they're pleasant to work with, and they're wasting a ton of time. But you don't know that. Look for communication via email. That should not happen. Workflows can prevent a lot of that. I'm working with a client right now on their engineering change process, which consists of 1 million people sending 1 million emails to 1 million other people. We're gonna put that all in a workflow that will be organized by the ERP system. And the important thing to recognize about workflows is that it's not the computer telling you what to do. It's the humans designing a process and then instructing the system to kind of herd them through that process that they've already agreed to follow. So the process is designed by humans, but it's organized and it's run by the system. That's where to start. I could talk all day on this subject, but the amount of wasted time that I see, both on the factory floor and in offices, because systems aren't really meeting the need, but no one really knows it and no one really sees it. It's just incredible. David, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I see your problem. I looked at your profile. Harvard Business School. I see what the problem is.
Well, you know what? How many Harvard Business School graduates does it take to screw in a light bulb? Only one, and you don't even have to screw it in. All you got to do is hold it up, and the whole world revolves around them.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that.
So I have a comment on the email piece because I couldn't agree more. And I have clients where their salespeople are sending out proposals by email, and okay, if it's a recurring order of something they're already buying, I get it. That's not a problem. Or somebody says, yes, I'm definitely buying this. Just send me a quote. But if you're trying to negotiate something that's a little more consultative and you send somebody a proposal, you're basically not giving them any opportunity to give you feedback, or you get any feedback, or to find out what's going to happen. And it's like crazy. And then somebody might want to negotiate and they end up negotiating by email. I mean, negotiation is a two-way communication back and forth. It's totally dysfunctional to do that by email. Or they send out some questions about the proposal, and instead of getting them on the phone to try to close the deal, they answer it by email. And these things are just unbelievably ineffective in terms of their ability to close a piece of business, and yet they do it. And and then especially they're trying to get meetings or conversations, and they do it entirely by email. And they now, I'm not saying you don't want to use email as a prospecting tool, but why are you sending emails? Because you want to get a phone conversation. Well, why not pick up the phone in the first place and then email? You know what I mean? And there's a good reason why people who communicate entirely by email, if they're in a sales role, they're usually looking for a job in 6 months.
All right, next slide. Project management is a discipline that companies oughta know better, because business really is a series of projects. There are very few simple projects anymore. Most of them involve multiple departments and multiple levels and various perspectives of expertise. And so over time, this discipline, and it really is a discipline, has been developed, and you can get certified as a PMP. There are a small number of standard tools that ought to be used, and they ought to be used in a standard way by each company. And they ought to get good at project management, because that's what they do. It's just one project after another, hopefully continuous improvement projects. But whatever they are, if you don't know how to manage projects, you're at a real disadvantage across the entirety of the business. One other thing I want to emphasize is that, the tools are really important, and standardizing them is really important, but the most important thing for the project manager or the leader are the soft skills, because you're going to have a variety of people in the room coming from different places with different kinds of viewpoints and expertise and personalities, and you're trying to meld them pretty quickly into a functioning team that can go out and win a game. People who have the soft skills are at a huge advantage in that market. And that's another thing I could talk about all day, but I'll leave it at that. Supply chain management is becoming more and more important, because supply chains are no longer as reliable as they used to be for a whole variety of reasons. It begins with the basics, though. If you can't do the basics, then you can't go on to the rest. So here are the basics: is knowing what you have on the shelf. Just knowing what you have and where it is a challenge for a lot of businesses. There are good systems, MRP systems, stands for Material Resource Planning, that are now standard as part of ERP systems that will help you do it as long as you feed them the correct data. They will help you tell what you need and when you need to order it, depending on your schedule and depending on the lead times of suppliers. It's a great tool if you feed it the correct information. A lot of people don't use it properly, and I even had one client that wasn't using it at all. They had bought an ERP with an MRP module in it and never turned it on. There are a number of methods of de-risking the supply chain and diversifying the supply chain that I won't get into right now, but that's a piece of it. And then, of course, there's no substitute for building relationships between suppliers. Having personal relationships is the best thing, because when you're in a jam, it's the person who has the best relationship that goes to the head of the line. And I try to treat customers that way too. I try to remember that, we want to be a good supplier. And if we've built a good relationship, that counts for a lot. Two people can pick up the phone, call each other and say, hey, I'm in a jam and I need help. And because you know that person, something about them anyway, it just makes you more willing to help. Rather than saying you're customer number 107, you're going to have to stand in line. So I teach a whole course in supply chain management, but I'll leave it at that. Lean and Six Sigma is a subset of continuous improvement. It's an important subset. The essence of Lean, believe it or not, is simplicity. The most important, the best regarded manufacturing companies in the world, people like Toyota, the most sophisticated manufacturing companies are the ones who make it the simplest. Every process is broken down. Every step that can be eliminated is eliminated. Every step that can be strengthened and make more foolproof is made more foolproof. Everything that can be visual is made visual. It's really interesting that the essence of sophistication in today's manufacturing is about making things simple. It's also about adopting a pull system in your manufacturing rather than a push system, where downstream parts are demanding from upstream rather than upstream pushing things downstream. The reason that has developed over the years is a good one. It has to do with setup times on machines, which is the root of all evil in manufacturing. If you take 3 or 4 hours to set up a machine, you want to get lots of parts over that. You want to amortize that setup time over a large number of parts. But what does that do? It pushes things downstream. It encourages overproduction. You're going to have too much work in process. You're going to have to find space to store all that stuff. People are going to have to move it around. You have to monitor it in your inventory system. You have to do cycle counts and physical inventories at the end of the fiscal year. There's really nothing good about it. But it's become a necessity because most American manufacturers haven't spent a lot of time figuring out how to reduce setup times. Imagine if you could set up a machine by snapping your fingers. Would you then be willing to run the one-off part that you need and just one? Of course you would. Why not? Doesn't cost you anything. But if it takes 3 hours to set up a machine, you want to run as many parts as you possibly can before you run out of material, right? And it just causes all kinds of problems. So we spend a lot of time looking at setup times. Six Sigma is a little different. Six Sigma is about the discipline of using data and data analysis to make decisions rather than going on hunches and hearsay and gut feel. I was in a conversation the other day with a guy who wanted a significant upgrade to his shipping system. He was the head of shipping for a large manufacturing company. And I said, well, how much is this thing going to cost? He goes, well, probably $15,000 or $20,000. I said, okay, what is it going to save? Well, just yesterday, it would have saved $200. I'm like, well, that's not an ROI argument. No one is going to spend $15,000 because it would have saved you $200 yesterday. You've got to come up with some data to show that there's a return on this investment. And until you do it, no one's going to listen, including me. But too many people are not disciplined in saying, wait a minute, I don't really care what your opinion is. What does the data say? What is the data telling us? They're not good at gathering the data, which is an art to itself. And they don't have the statistical background to analyze the data and to get the data to tell them what is going on. So that's the essence of Six Sigma. But what both of them are and what continuous improvement is really a cultural mind shift. There's a big difference between walking in the door in the morning and saying, my job is to run a machine or enter work orders or count inventory or whatever your job is, versus saying, my job is to figure out how to do my job a little bit better today than I did it yesterday. A little more efficiency, a little less chance for quality problems. And I'm jumping ahead here, but in the next slide, you'll see this concept called 1/10 of 1%. If you divide your day into 1/10 of 1%, which is 1,000 parts, divide your day into 1,000 parts. assume that you're working an 8-hour day. That's 480 minutes. So each of those parts lasts roughly 30 seconds. And I ask you, can you figure out how to save 30 seconds by doing something differently? Right?
Sure.
And lock it in. So if it's a different way of managing your email or whatever your idea is that saves 30 seconds, you're going to save 30 seconds today and 30 seconds tomorrow and 30 seconds the next day. And if you come up with one of those ideas each day, believe it or not, your organization's productivity will increase 25% per year. 25% a year. Just do the math. 1/10 of 1% is roughly 2% per month with 20 working days. Multiply that by 12 and add a little for compounding, and you're at 25%. That's tough to do. And I have to admit, we never got there in any of the plants I ran. But we sure did have the culture, and we averaged around 12%. And 12% is nothing to sneeze at. It means you double your productivity every 6 years. And any manufacturing firm that could say we improved our overall productivity by 12% in a year, they should be proud of themselves. That's really good.
You know, and I'm thinking about this, and particularly the Six Sigma discussion you had, Josh. And you know, what I tell my clients is that there's two parts to productivity and sales. One is efficiency, and you know, that's the time, the amount of time you're spending on things. The second is effectiveness. How effective are you during that time? And you know, looking at the data, yeah, you know, I spend a fair amount of time at the beginning of a relationship just mining their existing customer data. I mean, just revenue and how many things they bought. And, you know, and they don't spend enough time doing that. But just say, you know, it's always, you always got at least, you know, the 80-20 rule. You're getting 80% of your business from 20% of your customers. Okay. But then, you know, there's usually a top tier that stand alone, maybe even one or two customers. And then there's the second tier, maybe, let's just say it's 30 customers. And then there's maybe a third tier that's maybe 70 customers, let's just say, okay? That's where your best opportunity is. And yet salespeople are spending time with people who are like, wait, you know, tier 7, or they bring in new business that's a potential tier 7. Well, you want to be looking at how could I get some more tier 2s and tier 3s as new customers, but also how many tier 3s can I make a tier 2? And they don't spend enough time on that. And the other thing is, what is their buying habits? So if they knew, and this is where AI can really be powerful, because you can really automate what salespeople are doing, who they're talking to, or even automate the messaging, the communication, so that people are reminded, hey, it's time to buy. I need to replace this. I need to buy this, you know. And yeah, it's right. I've been meaning to call these guys. And so there's a lot of power in there that you know, people aren't really spending enough time on
For
to make
sure.
them more efficient and effective.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right. So this is what I was just talking about, and I won't belabor the point, but it does require a huge and consistent effort to get it going, to get people into that mindset of my job is to do my job better today than yesterday, instead of walking in like zombies, is not easy. And it requires a lot of education and a lot of recognition and a lot of communication and a lot of follow-up. And it's exhausting. It's exhausting work to do it right, but that's what it takes to get that flywheel going. Once you get it going, it becomes much easier, but it can easily take a year or two just to get it going. And you've got to hammer at it every day. One great thing about it is that it is a defendable advantage. I have a client that just spent $1.5 million on a laser cutting machine for sheets of steel, and they think it bought them a competitive advantage. And I had to think to myself, no, any moron with $1.5 million can go out and buy the same machine, and your advantage is gone in a day. But not everyone can build a culture of continuous improvement across their entire organization. That's tough. And you can bet that most of your competitors won't do it. So if you can, over the long haul, it becomes a defendable advantage. One other thing I want to mention is the question that was asked before the webinar about the role of artificial intelligence. First of all, there's way too many companies getting into it to just get into it because it's the new shiny thing, and you know, everybody's doing it. Well, you gotta, you know, the hair's on fire and all that. That's obviously not the right way to do it. The right way to do it is to find problems where AI can be helpful and then solve those problems using AI. And I'll give you a few examples. One of them is to analyze large data sets. Those machines pump out a ton of data that no one is using. They've all got PLCs, they've all got drives, they've all got controllers, they've all got data tags. They're all pumping out lots of useful information about where the process is wandering and varying, but no one's collecting it and no one's analyzing it. And one of the reasons is those data sets are huge. They can be in the billions of data points, and people have a hard time getting their arms around it. And even the best statistical tools are kind of clunky with data sets that big, but AI can handle it. It can find trends in the data that humans can't find. It can ask questions that people wouldn't even think to ask. So it's very useful for that, and the larger companies are doing it. Another one is training. There's a lot of training now that's being done with what's called augmented reality. It's not a virtual reality. It's an augmented reality superimposed on a real reality. So, for example, you could superimpose diagrams on a machine so that a trainee can be looking at the machine but being instructed at the same time. Push this button when this happens, push that button when that happens, or whatever it is they need to do. Similarly, for diagnostics, especially remote diagnostics, and also for installation at times. Boeing's electricians now do not carry huge sheafs of schematics onto the plane when they're wiring a plane. What they do is they wear a set of glasses that superimposes the wiring diagram on whatever they happen to be looking at the time. And it tells them exactly what to do. And when your field of view shifts, the wiring diagram shifts with it. So no more sheafs of schematics and much fewer errors and a lot less wasted time. A third area it can help is in bringing up documentation. A lot of companies, especially in the regulated industries, have thousands, sometimes millions of pages of documentation. And just finding what you need when you need it is a chore in itself. What AI allows you to do is to use a natural language query to find what you need. So if you're a trainee at a machine, to go back to the same example, you're being asked to run a certain product. There's a procedure for running that product. You don't remember what that procedure is. You can ask AI, hey, I need to run product X. Show me how to set up the machine. And it will go to the correct documentation and present it to you on your screen right in front of you. Another way is with maintenance. Preventive maintenance, it's the best we knew how to do, but it's not great. It's generally overkill. The problem is you don't know what you're overkilling, so you do it anyway to prevent unscheduled breakdowns. And that's okay because it's the best you have. Then it became predictive maintenance. The problem with that is there wasn't enough data to feed the system You know, for example, how often is a bearing going to burn out on a machine? It might be once or twice in its lifetime. That's not nearly enough data to predict when you need to change the bearing. Well, now they've gone to condition-based maintenance, and this makes a lot more sense. So to continue with the same example, you can put a temperature sensor and a vibration sensor on the bearing and track temperature and vibration. And what you'll see over a period of years is two steady lines. Nothing's happening, nothing's happening, nothing's happening. And then at some point, both of those lines will probably start to trend north. The vibration is increasing, therefore the temperature is increasing also. That's a pretty good sign that the bearing is beginning to fail. So that's another way that AI is being used, is in conjunction with sensors. And lastly, there's this concept of digital twins. A digital twin is a digital representation of a machine that allows you to sort of play what if games and see what happens. So, for example, if you have a compressor in the plant, you can play a game called "Should I change the filter right now?" And based on history, it can say it's either worth it to do it or it's not. And there's many other uses for digital twins. They're being used now to develop new products also. They're being used to take the place of wind tunnels, which are really expensive. Not every company is using digital twins. I would say it's actually a small minority at this point, but it's spreading. The biggest uses are in documentation, training, and sensors. So I hope that answers that question. And in the 1 minute we have left, I'm happy to take questions.
No, I want to add, because I already mentioned the AI thing about where they fit in, but in terms of analyzing data, this is what I was talking about, because what are the trends and what are people buying and how often, and that way you can serve up reminders to your salespeople of who to call and when, or reminders to your clients, and mining that data to really make them focus much better on where the opportunities are. And again, also I mentioned in producing lists, in how they can reach out to prospective customers and existing customers, and their follow-up tracking and communication. All of these have AI-based tools that you're not starting from scratch. They're being adopted by the tools that you're already using or their competitors. And then documentation, when you're talking about documentation, so serving up to the salesperson what document needs to be included in a presentation based on where they are in the sales process, or what other information they've already gotten, where they are in the cycle, or automatically sending information to prospective customers based on where they are in their marketing or buying journey, based on assessing that with AI. So all of that is really where AI is having some really dramatic impact.
It's having a huge impact in programming.
Yeah.
The hiring of programmers has slowed way down because
Yeah.
AI can do it for you.
Yeah.
In some cases, you got to have a human to sanitize it and make sure it hasn't gone off the rails. But there's an awful lot of programming done by AI now.
Okay. Dave, do you have any questions?
Well, I am still waiting to find, and I'm looking. My world is the biggest of the big, old legacy, back office. Boeing was a customer way back when, and I have yet to see anything that talks about AI can actually help understand operational software without breaking it. Writing new code, any idiot can write new code. because it's a blank sheet of paper. But anyway, I have to, and so AI is here. In my particular niche, I'm still looking for, just to pick on one thing, NLP, natural language processing. The language inside the systems we help with is by no stretch of the imagination natural. The programmer that wrote that code 25 years ago, the team of programmers that have maintained, as you emphasize, the invisible code, by no means is natural. The programmer is typically totally isolated from the actual business process, business problem, has no idea what the language is. So that's.
Yeah, I can't speak to that. It's not my area of
me neither.
expertise.
Yeah, well, the thing that I'm aiming at is to bring push because one piece of me is dealing with these undergraduates who absolutely live. The way they live is like this, right? You cannot talk to an 18-year-old or 19-year-old without them having their face in their phone. So how do I put the onboarding, the terminology learning down on the phone? Because that's the supercomputer that they use. That's their first point of contact.
Well, it just occurred to me, when I was overseas in Europe, and I downloaded an app called GPS My City. It essentially enables you to do a self-guided tour. It tells you what you're looking at and where to go and all that. There's no reason why companies couldn't develop a GPS My Factory.
Oh, absolutely. I've got somewhere in my archives one of those folders from the last time I touched the system for pay was 40 years ago. And I was frustrated by the lack of accurate documentation. I was using, for one thing, I was trying to use an HP plotter. Remember those little desktop things, the little four pins on the side?
Yep.
And I think I still have it, but I'm pretty sure I got some diagrams that I was trying to force out of those things, because in my world, the specifications are the code. If it's in a manual, it's probably not relevant. 5 years ago, maybe, but no one's maintained it over 5 years. And so how to auto-magically extract what's going on from the code that's my thing. But anyway, Josh, this is wonderful. And Ken, I had a meeting with, what was it, Wealth Management? A guy that called me, I forget his name now. I just looked him up. But anyway. So.
Somebody that I know?
Yeah, it was somebody met at that luncheon at that golf course.
Yeah, well.
Wealth Management.
Jim Moniz? That
sounds right. Northeast Wealth Management.
Yeah. That's Jim. Yeah.
Yeah, and so he called me thinking I could he'd get a good commission off my pile of money. But I want to revisit him because we're now in the middle of he was about to hire a Bentley intern.
Oh yeah.
So I wanted, and this is just so, I think the reason that Jim hired him was the kid has his eyes set on brokerage, securities qualifications. There's a whole series of exams that are just acronym and opaque language beyond your worst horror show, nightmare. So I want to find out how that intern is doing in terms of ingesting the new language.
Yeah, well, I'm talking to him. Let me first stop the recording. Hold on.